All right, so, Shelly's been talking about the supportive role. We all have supportive roles. I mean, you're in a supportive role to God, if nothing else. I mean, if you're at the top of the earth, you're still under Him. So everybody has that. We have different supportive roles. We talked about that. And, for most people, you're going to go in and out. We're in different hats. In some relationships, you may be in a support role. In other relationships, you may be in or other positions, you may be in the lead. And we need to know how to switch in and out. And really, to be a good leader, you really need to know how to be a good follower. You need to know how the things that we're talking about now, some people, especially in this world, they just think they just want to lead. And they don't know how to follow at all, which makes them poor leaders, even if they don't think so. The people under them would say that. So we've been talking about that the last few weeks. So we have some questions that have come in, and we're just going to talk about some of these things that have been asked, and also just some of them relate to one another. So we're just going to get into it. And then if you guys have questions, like if while we're talking, there's other questions that come up, you can just put that. You want to just keep that up in the background, that slide, when we don't have scripture. So if anybody needs that, you can go and just ask a question that way. I mean, if you want to ask a question here, you can too. If you want to raise your hand, we can do that too. That just allows you to be anonymous, but it doesn't really matter to us. Either way, we'll see how far we get. I mean, we may cover all this stuff and go through, but we're going to just some, the purpose of this is to get into some of the things that are just real world. Like, what do you really think? You can teach on something, right? And you can be like, yeah, that's great. How does that look? And so that's our intent, is to talk about these things. And so if you have a question, well, yeah, that's great, but I still have this question. Well, then ask it. That's how somebody else probably has the same question. So the first one is, how do you juggle supporting extended family members' issues/problems if and when it cuts into your immediate family's time? So I'll read Genesis 2:24. It says, "Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." So the principle here is that when you're married, you become a new family unit. I mean, yes, when you're single, you are a family unit, but when you become married, you're breaking off from your family. Not in a way that you're cutting them off, but like it says, a man shall leave. Can you put that up again? Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. So now they're a family unit. Now, when they have children, that's just extending that family unit. But there needs to be, even though you can have extended family situations, there needs to be a break. There needs to be a separation of the family. In other words, it shouldn't be that a mother or father is in a controlling relationship or dominating relationship with their children. That happens a lot. There's a relationship there, and then the child, whether it's whatever, male, female, it's mother or father, goes into this relationship, and the mother or father still wants to kind of have a hand in it, and sometimes the child's still doing it, and that creates an unhealthy connection, unhealthy relationship. It really needs to be separate. So when we're talking about this specific question, I'll just read it again. How do you juggle supporting extended family members' issues, problems, if and when it cuts into your immediate family's time? You're going to talk about being supportive and dealing with things at home. The answer is, you don't let it cut into your immediate family's time. Your immediate family is your priority. Otherwise, you will create additional issues with your immediate family. So now you're just going to have another issue. And can be pressure somebody's has issues or something going on, but you need to create boundaries. You need to have boundaries. Boundaries are not bad. You have a boundary called your skin. Keeps things out, keeps things in. You don't have to see everything that's going on the inside. Everything that's on the outside can't get in. That's okay. And sometimes people are uncomfortable with boundaries, so they're uncomfortable saying no to people. One thing you have to realize is that you can say no, and no is a complete sentence. In other words, you do not have to give a reason why. Just say no. That's okay. See, people feel uncomfortable sometimes. And sometimes when people are pushy, so you're dealing with pushy people, you just being normal feels like you're being abrasive. Because with a normal relationship, people wouldn't push it in, so you wouldn't feel like you'd have to say much. When people are being pushy, just you asserting yourself can make you feel like you're being aggressive. And you're not. You're just this other person that's being aggressive. And so we have to deal with these things and realize we're not the Savior of the world. Jesus is. And so your immediate family is your responsibility. Your extended family is not your direct responsibility. Now, you may have some support there. You may be helping them, but you should not be enabling them to make poor decisions or to not take care of themselves at the expense of your immediate family. Otherwise, your kids are going to resent it. You're going to just deal with another issue. And so it's got to be healthy. That doesn't mean you cut your extended family off. That doesn't mean you're selfish. It means you have right priorities. And remember, the question is, it's interfering with this time. By definition, it's a problem, so something needs to change, and it's not like, well, how are we going to do this? We just put up with it. You're just dealing with another problem.
And a little bit more on that is also in communicating when you now have your own family unit. And so you want to be really careful about talking about your spouse and your children in a negative way to extended family. Because your children and your spouse, when you're under the roof together, you get to work through things, you get to the other side. The extended family does not. And so plus a lot of times extended family are going to take one side or the other. And so it kind of, if you're saying something negative about your spouse to your family loves you, they're going to take your side. Sometimes they'll take the other person's side too, but because they know you. But a lot of times, they can end up getting this, and then it becomes this unfair dynamic that it's you and your family against your spouse, and then your spouse and their family against you. And so you just want to be careful of that dynamic. So you want to you have now a family unit. And that unit needs to be a private in certain ways. It should be, you don't want to be throwing your spouse and your children under the bus to other people that are not right in that home with you to actually be able to walk through everything together.
All right, so we're going to get it there. I'm going to read two questions, okay, because they're kind of related, and we're just going to cover rather than breaking up and and we're just this is the essence of the supportive role. First one, do you want to read that? Go ahead.
What is God's will for how much input folks in the supportive roles would offer those they support? For example, we've heard examples of how husbands should be wise to take their wives' input into account.
One wife. Not wives, plural, inputs.
All right. So you're taking her input into account, but we've also heard in some examples about work, for instance, that input shouldn't be offered by a supporter unless it's requested. What is the heart of God on this? Is unsolicited input ever appropriate in a supportive role?
And then the other question that we're just going to cover these together. What should I do if I believe I am to be in a job, church, position, any of those things, and I would like things to be done differently than they are, but don't believe the group or organization is headed that way? So this is the essence of being in a supportive role, is talking about inputting basically into whoever's leading. And what does that look like? And what if I don't agree with what they're doing? But I feel like I'm supposed to be a part of it. Or I don't see a place for what I think I want to do, or you could have variations on this theme. Basically I see something there, but I feel like I'm supposed to be involved. Okay, what do I do? Well, that's kind of the definition of what we're talking about. Let's go ahead. I'm going to read Ephesians 6:5-9. It says slaves. Now, when you read slaves, okay, think supportive role. Here, really think employee, somebody you're working, or somebody underneath. But really, you could translate these things where it's talking about masters, think boss, think employer. When you see slaves, think employee. But really, this applies across the board. Slaves, obey your earthly masters, or we could say employees, obey your employers with deep respect and fear. Serve them sincerely as you would serve Christ. Try to please them all the time, not just when they are watching you. As slaves of Christ, do the will of God with all your heart. Work with enthusiasm as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people. Remember that the Lord will reward each one of us for the good job we do, whether we are slaves or free. Masters, you could think employers, treat your employees in the same way. Don't threaten them. Remember, you both have the same master in heaven, and he has no favorites. You want to read the next scripture?
Yeah. We're also going to look at 1 Timothy 6:1-2. All slaves should show full respect for their masters, so they will not bring shame on the name of God and his teaching. If the masters are believers, that is no excuse for being disrespectful. Those slaves should work all the harder because their efforts are helping other believers who are well loved.
I'm going to read. I'll come back to that. What do you think? Yeah, I'll read that. I'll read our scripture here in a little bit. So I'm going to go back with those scriptures in mind. Basically, the questions are: when, as somebody who's supporting, should I give feedback? Should I offer any input to the leader? And if I feel like I'm supposed to be a part of something, but it's not going where I think or want to, or I don't think there's a place for me, or I don't feel like I'm getting something I need, but I believe I should be a part of it. What do I do? So you can read from these scriptures. In somebody that's supporting, it reads slave, master. You could say employee, employer. You could read really these principles apply for anybody that's in an organization. You could read, church member, pastor, whatever. These same principles apply, and you're really dealing with the core of, if I'm in a supportive role, how does that look when there's another leader? So when you talk about communication, number one, with leadership, it varies based on the roles and relationship. Everyone is different, relationships are different, personalities are different. So in other words, there is no one answer to this, because each of us could have a different dynamic. One employer could have a different relationship with different employees. One he's known for years and has a close working relationship. That person is at a different level versus a different employee. And so then there's personalities. There's just the background of the people. And so there's not any one answer that do this all the time or never do this, okay? But leaders are generally more receptive to people who are positive, helpful, and working for the good of the organization. That should go without saying, but there's a whole lot of people that are negative, complain, and then wonder why nobody listens to them, and wonders why their leaders do not want to hear from them.
Or don't want to promote them.
Yeah, because that type of individual just is not working well in the organization. Remember, you're dealing with an organization that has a purpose. Mm-hmm. We have to ask ourselves, are we helping that purpose? See, we're to help the organization that we're a part of, whether it's a company, a church, or something else. If God led you there, you are to do whatever you can to help. It is not your job to determine the direction of the organization unless you're in a leadership position. Obviously, if you're the main leader, but if you're in a different leadership position and leadership authority has been delegated to you. Otherwise, it's not your job. It's not my job. And I tell you, I've held a number of positions throughout my life, all the way from just laborer, when I was a teenager, just doing, whatever in a construction area. I worked at a restaurant. I served tables. I worked for a trim carpenter, which, that's all the finished carpentry, all the wood around the doors, the trim, and the base and everything. My title was Vice President of Closets. They called me that jokingly. So as the lowest person on the team, I do the closets where nobody sees stuff. And so I was just me, but they'd say, Jim's the Vice President of Closets, so I didn't have anybody under me. I've worked as an intern in the engineering field. I've been an entry-level engineer. I've been a senior engineer, team lead engineer. I've been a manager with people responsibilities. Obviously a pastor, but I've been in churches. I've been a music minister. I've been in the I've been in the nursery. I've been in the children's. I've been in the choir. I've been the choir leader. Played the instruments. Been supportive with the pastors, so I preached when they were gone, did whatever, been on the youth, greeted, done, and pretty much anything else for shorter periods of time. And so been on all sides of these, and I will tell you, without fail, the people that are coming into an organization, if you're coming in wanting to help and move that organization forward and being a support and having a positive attitude, you are going to be received better than if you're negative and always fault finding and being a know-it-all. It doesn't matter what level you're at. And we need to understand that it is as when we are in that role of a supportive person, our job is to do whatever the leadership has determined to do. If it's a sports team, you don't tell the coach what to do. If this is the strategy, we're doing that. And you call them coach. You don't call them by their first name. You're going to, hey, that's what we're going to do. We're going to do that. Does that mean no leader will ever take feedback? No. Does it mean that a coach will never ask for feedback? Does that mean, a business leader will never ask for feedback or input? But they're asking for it. They're facilitating the process for it. Unsolicited feedback is just arrogance. In any role. It's called being pushy. You guys are all quiet. Just in a normal relationship, if somebody comes up to you and starts telling you what you should do, that's a pushy person. That's a person that thinks they know more about your life than you do. And when there's a leader of an organization, somebody comes up and says, hey, we should do it this way, that's an arrogant and pushy person. Yes. If it wasn't asked for, that does not mean the leader is arrogant. That means they're getting the job done, and somebody that sees this much of the picture decides they know better. There's no process or no asking for it, and somebody that just goes up and says, hey, boss, hey, CEO, you're here. I just want to tell you about this little thing that needs to change in our company. And he's like, who are you and what do you do? I have 3,000 people under me. And why are you taking my time? And people say, that's arrogant. It's not. He's doing his job. He has 6 layers in between you and him to deal with that. You should be you just jumped the chain of command. Yes. And I'll tell you this, from being in management, if you ever go over your boss's head in a good organization, you ever go over your boss's head, you email your boss's boss, you copy your boss's boss trying to get something done, you are the problem. Right then, you are identified with them as the problem in management. They are not saying, who is this superhero that's trying to straighten this all out? What they're saying is, who is this person that thinks they're so important that they need to jump the chain of command. Because I've had those conversations. That is what's going on the other side. And so it is not something, it's so prevalent in our society that people, it's so self-serving and self-centered. Me. So what you see is basically no matter what positions people are in, they think it's about them. And so what do? You do see leaders that are domineering and bossy and just jerks because they're the leader and they're worldly. Then you see people that are employees and they think the boss is an idiot and they think they should hear everything from them and they're self-centered and think everybody. So they want to be the boss, but the boss wants to be the boss. The boss is a jerk boss. The employee is a jerk employee. And that's the way the world generally is. You want to jump in here? Because there's other stuff.
So last week we talked about Joseph and how Joseph was with Potiphar. He did everything right. Potiphar's wife threw him under the bus. He ends up in prison. And so, yes, so there are people out there, there are situations out there that are not good. But Joseph honored the Lord. It doesn't mean that you're a doormat, but it does mean that you know your place. And so he honored the Lord, and the Lord is the one. With humility, Proverbs 15, I think it was 33, it says, if with humility comes honor. And so when you have a humility about things, like you're not trying to overtake a situation, you're not trying to tell someone that they're dumb, your attitude will create an environment where people want to hear from you. When you go to a sporting event, you have all of these little cheerleaders that are beautiful, and they're kicking their legs up and doing all sorts of things, and they're telling the guys, go team, go team, go. And you know what? That is to motivate the team to do their best. You do not have them on the sideline pointing their fingers, angrily shouting, saying, you idiot, why did you miss the ball? That was not, cheerleaders do not have that type of a role. And even if they may be thinking that because the team did something stupid, they're still there going, rah, 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 you're amazing. And so, we can learn from that type of a help. Nobody, if you never do your best when you feel like you're going to be judged, like everybody's looking over your shoulder and everybody's pointing the finger at you, expecting you to fail, you will be nervous and uptight. But man, if you have somebody going, hey, good job, man, I appreciate you, appreciate what you're doing. You want to be around someone like that, but you don't want to be around the person that's always like, there they go again, they're so stupid. Gosh, this whole organization is just going to pot. So our attitude brings so much to an organization when we go into things with, I want to help, what can I do, rather than how can you serve me? Yep. How can, even in a church, how can you help me do my ministry? Or versus how can I help you accomplish the vision that God has given you? What can I do to come and be a part of this?
Yep. Because that's the thing. With any organization, whether it's a church, it's a business, if somebody has started a business and they're trying to get it done, what they do and what they've hired us to do is help them. Mm-hmm. It is not to do a side vision, because if this person's trying to go this way and somebody's going, well, yeah, but I'd like this, and yeah, but I'd like this, you're not helping. You're not helping. Well, I'm trying to make it better. There's a way to do that. If they want it, then you gotta use wisdom. There's got to be a facilitator. Yeah, but they really need it. That really doesn't matter. And so the same people, and all of us are like this, that think they want to give that advice, almost without fail hate it if somebody does that to them. But I like to give it. But you got to understand, if we're going in a direction and the organization's going in a direction, the proper response is, how can I help? Just remember that phrase. My manager, when I was working at a company here in the Boston area, when he hired me, and I remember him saying, just remember to always ask, how can I help? That goes for a boss, it goes for an employee, it goes for anybody. How can I help? How can I be helpful here? Instead of, what are you doing it like that for? How can I help you? How can we get this done? How can we pull in the same direction? Mark 10, verse 42, it says, so Jesus called them together and said, you know that the rulers in this world lord it over their people, and officials flaunt their authority over those under them. But among you it will be different. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first among you must be the slave of everyone else. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others and to give his life as a ransom for many. So this is saying that the world, it tries to flaunt their authority, but it says for you, he's talking to his disciples, and this is for us, if you're going to be a leader, you need to be a servant. Okay, so if the leader is supposed to be a servant, what's the supportive role supposed to be? But you know what people think? I want to be the leader. But the leader's supposed to be a servant. So the supportive role is supposed to be a servant. In other words, we're supposed to serve one another. So the supportive role is supposed to say, what can I do to get it done? The leader's supposed to say, we're doing this to help you help the organization. That's different than the person going, I want to do this. Why aren't you doing that? That person's not helping and they're not serving. They're serving themselves. And you see a lot of this in the world. Go ahead.
Another thing that sometimes happens is you can be where you think God wants you to be, and you feel like you're not growing. And this is something that if you're where God wants you to be and he hasn't told you to move on, then there's still lots of ways for you to grow in that place. And so sometimes it's just a tweaking of the way that we're looking at things, that you can be in a place and you think that your growth is supposed to look like but that's not the growth that's actually taking place in you. You could be growing in other areas, like it may be a growing of a character issue. It may be a learning to work well with others. There's a number of different ways of following a leader. There's so many different things besides just the area that is your potential or your gifting that is being developed wherever you are at. And so to think, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be, and for some reason God has me here. I don't know why, but he's got me here, and I feel like I'm being held back. There's not anything that I'm really getting better on. Well, this is something that if you're in the place that God has for you to be, then you have plenty of opportunity to grow. You have plenty of opportunity to develop. It may just not look like what you think it should look like. I can remember a time where I was an employee, and I thought for this organization, and I thought that it was supposed to look a certain way. And, just kind of, I'd like to say I was super supportive, but, I was a little whiny and a little complaining about it because, I thought, you know what, I have something to offer here, and I'm not getting to offer it. And, just kind of get a little bit frustrated about why this is, I have a gift, why aren't you using it? And looking back on that, I have to say I was really a lot younger, praise the Lord, and so now, in hindsight, 2020, I can look back at that and just realize, you know what? I grew in so many other ways. And I thought it was supposed to be this gift that was being developed, and it was so many other gifts and characters, building things that were happening on the inside of me. And that helped me for the future of where I was going. But had I gotten upset, maybe quit, maybe stopped being where I was supposed to be, I would have missed that opportunity of what God was actually putting into me in that season.
So there is always, and this does take humility, there is always, if we are where God, think about this, if we're where we believe God has us to be, so it's God. You think this is the Lord. But we think, yeah, but like what Shelly was saying. But I can't but I can't do X, and this is what I'm supposed to do. I think I'm supposed to do X. So sometimes, a lot of times what people think is, the organization needs to change so that I can do X. But the Lord told me to be here. So I believe the Lord has me here, and I believe I'm supposed to do X, but evidently nobody else is with the program. Or I have to change my perspective. Or I need to grow. Or what I thought is not, I can grow, it's just a different way, and actually I am doing what I'm supposed to do, or I am in the wrong place. I could be in the wrong place. In that case, then I miss God, I need to go. But so many times, it's real easy when things get uncomfortable to be like, well, I'm in the wrong place. Well, I can't, this needs to change. You know, when people get uncomfortable, they start trying to make other people change. And I've seen it in my own life. There's times I was like, no, I'm supposed to be doing this, and I need to change stuff. And it's humility. I mean, you got to humble, you're like, well, you're hoping for a transfer, but you're supposed to be here. All right, so it's before me. What am I going to do? How can I go about helping? How can I go about making this thing better? How can I go about just being a blessing in whatever you need? Not you change to what I need. What do you need? Okay, you want me to clean the toilets? I'll clean the toilets. You want me to pick something up? I'll do that. What do you need? Well, I don't like doing that. See, that's what the world would say. But we need to be not like the world. So a couple things, and this is just because this is so kind of core. I mean, this is kind of a core thing. So just a couple more things on this, just for, I guess, completeness. Depending on what your role is in an organization, there are many aspects of the organization you don't see. Like I may have mentioned this in a different, feels like I did sometime when we were up here, but I was reading something once and they were talking about management and talking about being a manager and the manager sitting in the office of his boss and just getting the news that somebody's quit and we got to do this and this. And, it's like, you kind of feel like you're getting half the story. He said, wrong, you're getting 1/10 story. Your manager has that situation duplicated across the board, so you are getting a fragment of what they see come across their desk. And so when we make decisions or we make judgments based on, I see this, and in the way I see, this ought to happen here. And what the leader is taking in is all this, and you have to balance all that. So keep that in mind. That's a good thing. So you want to say, how can I help you? You may see something I don't, and when you understand, it's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, that was a pretty good call, actually. You were juggling those 8 things? Wow, you did a good job threading the needle. I'll go sit down now. I've seen that. Another just real quick thing is just, there was a podcast, I'm not going to give the name of it. When I was becoming management at a local company here, and I asked my boss, I said, I was just trying to get better. And I went and talked to him. And when I originally talked to him, just said, hey, man, whatever you need, I just want to learn from you. And I said, is there any resources that you recommend? And he recommended this podcast, and it was on management. And I remember one thing, they were talking about feedback and giving feedback to employees and how to do that and all that so that they actually receive it. And one thing he said when they were talking about this whole feedback thing is he goes, this is something you never do with your boss. He's like, you don't go to your boss and go, hey, man, I'd like to give you some feedback. In other words, I think you ought to be doing this different. He's like, you don't ever do that. That is just out of order. Now, are we saying that people are just unapproachable? No. But it's a proper way. You've got to understand that if they put processes in place, if they have a relationship with you, you have a discussion, they ask for your input, that's a way for you to go, hey, you got a lot on your plate, just wanted to let you know you could be doing this different, just thought I'd offer that. It just doesn't go well. It's like what you're telling that person is, really? Number one, you think you know my job so well that you're going to come in and do that. Number two, you don't understand everything I'm really dealing with and what this job really entails. And so I'd appreciate it if you did what you are supposed to be doing like I'd ask so that we can get the thing moving. And that can sound, I don't know if that sounds harsh. It's just there's so much in the world that is counter this. It's so much from school age on up where it's like, hey, the kid's not learning, so it's the teacher's fault, and the parent calls the teacher, and it's all out of order instead of, hey, maybe the kid has something to learn. Same thing with employees. And people, and it's gotten in the church where it's like, hey, it's about me. And I see this, and so I want to be heard. And that's the other thing. People think they got a right to be heard. It's so backwards. It's just not mature, like, hey, everybody ought to just listen to everything. Well, where has that gotten us as a society? Versus, hey, people understand what they should do. They help. They fall in line. They understand authority. They understand the chain of command that gets so far. Go ahead. We'll wrap up.
Yep. And the other thing is just being appreciative of what you have. If you're in a supportive role, that means that you have a paycheck that's coming. A consistent paycheck. If you are the leader of an organization, you are responsible to make sure that the people have paychecks. And, sometimes the leader is going without in order to make sure that the people that are working for them have their needs met. And so just, you could be like, well, they're doing A, B, and C wrong. Yeah, but you know what? You have this protected salary that you are getting because of the initiative and the foresight that they have had to start this company, to put it together, to make it to where they now have employees, and now they're responsible for you. And so sometimes you may see how, well, this isn't quite right. Well, they're facing a lot of pressure to make sure that you have your consistent paycheck. And so sometimes just being thankful for that and just being appreciative and just like, you know what, thank you for seeing ahead and making it so I could even have this job, so that I have something, so that I can buy my groceries, I can pay my rent, I can pay my mortgage, whatever it is. And so the attitude of gratitude, we've heard that before, that just goes so far, to be able to be thankful. And, you appreciate it when someone appreciates you. And you would be more open to receive what they have to say because you know that they've got your back. You know that they like you. They appreciate you. And so you're a lot more open to hear what they have to say because you know what? If they're going to say it, they probably have some validity because they've got your back. They want to be, they're there for you. And so you're going to listen more to somebody that has that kind of attitude, that kind of humbleness, that kind of love for you, for your organization, for whatever it is that you're doing. They're going to listen more to and they're going to ask in that kind of situation.
And that's the thing. If we're not being there, it's not that they don't have channels for feedback. It just may be we're not part of that. And then we have to ask ourselves why. Not that we always will, but maybe am I the type of person? Am I helping? Am I supportive? And then maybe things open up. And the final thing I'll say, because you were saying it's, maybe this isn't perfect. That's the thing. Nothing will be perfect. We're all dealing with humanity. And that's the thing. No matter what organization you're in, no matter what personality type you're in, you are going to see that the way things get done is not ideal. I don't care where you go. And see, as long as we have this ideal that, no, if it should be this way. Says who? To get actually stuff done and then it should be, well, in textbook, sure. But actually, when it's getting done, to get the deals made and to get the business in and to get things on time, and it can get messy. And see, we're just dealing with people. And it's easy to, when we become tunnel vision, no matter what it is, whether it's a business, church, whatever, to become tunnel vision and think that we're not dealing with people. But we are dealing with people. I don't care what organization, every organization that I've ever been in, you're dealing with imperfect people. The leaders included. They just have a different role. Just because you're a leader doesn't mean that you're perfect. It just means you have a different role. And so if we'll keep that in mind and give grace and just, like Shelly said, be thankful, look at the positive, bring what you can to get it done, goes so far.